Ashish, hi. Ashish, can you tell us exactly about what is the role that EAC consulting plays in India?
So, EAC is basically a Germany-based management consulting firm. So we are present across all the technology or manufacturing sectors, and we are it's an advisory firm which is supporting European German Mittelstand, typically the mid-sized companies, to enter emerging markets like India, as well as expand also in these markets. So we focus around strategy, mergers, acquisitions, as well as operational excellence topics. These are the key areas of expertise.
You have a presence in several sectors.
Right.
Working from a German point of view, you're understanding their concepts, understanding their mannerisms and behaviors. How does it work across Indian companies? I mean, Indian companies have their own unique ways of working.
Right.
So I'm talking about Indian companies.
Right.
So how do you work closely? How does, from a German standard point of view, how do you collaborate with them?
Well, putting it purely from a behavioral point of view, it's a completely different style. Nothing good or bad about it, but let's say if I have to compare it with the German style, then it's very systematic, it's very structured, it's very detailed, it is pretty long, so you need to be really a patient, you really need to be a fisherman. Yeah? Whereas the Indian side is, let's say, a lot more spontaneous. You know, it's one side might call it unstructured, the other might call it flexible. Yeah, so these are, let's say, typical areas wherein we see differences. There's a big element of lack of quantification, which we have on the Indian side, and the Germans love numbers. And once you work more and more into it, so you realize that yes, it does make sense to really have quantified, basis to your decision making, because ultimately it's going to be huge investments, money at stake. So you better do it more systematically and cautiously rather than, a very spontaneous kind of an approach. So both sides have its pluses and minuses, but in my experience of almost 13 years working only with Germans, I'm somehow a bigger fan of the German side in this approach towards, business growth or entering new markets. It's very, very systematic, and we can learn a lot from there.
A lot of companies, a lot of sectors in India, look for foreign technology, or they always, like going shopping abroad for technology, or for some materials or something for anyone. So, what is the kind of advisory that how do you offer with German companies and Indian companies?
So, see, typically how it starts is when companies are looking at entering a particular market, be it India, for example. So first of all, we need to have absolute transparency on the market. What is really addressable to us. I mean, the whole market size is probably not relevant for us, so we really need to know what is addressable for us. And this means really getting market intelligence, which is very rarely available in any kind of organized sources. So you really need to be on the road to collect all this information. So the research and the analysis plays a very critical role. To get, and as we know how diverse we are, so getting information is also not the easiest of the tasks, but that is really the crux of it. So if your information levels are not really accurate, then the whole investment has a huge risk on this. So that is where we spend a lot of time. We do not dilute, that is the core of the quality. So the primary research becomes very, very relevant for us. And then, of course, based on that information base, you have to employ your tools, the strategy tools, which we learn from other markets as well, and also the nuances, the behavioral part from both the markets. And then, of course, both the countries have their own areas of expertise, or where one is stronger than the other. The advisory is basically to minimize the risk of the client. That is the core, let's say, underlying fundamental.
Well, now that the Indian government is looking at more, making ease of business, doing ease of business for a lot of companies. In your experience, how has that actually panned out, and how much of it is reality on the ground? And what is the reality on the ground?
I think Germany is probably a fantastic example of this, because this was the first time Indian government launched, let's say, an extension of Make in India as Make in India Mittelstand, wherein Germany was chosen to be the first country. And yes, and hopefully it is going to get replicated in a few countries as well. And we are the knowledge partners to the program, so I know it from really ground level that this is a beautiful attempt to make it really, this is really a simple facilitation and an effective facilitation program, wherein right from the political part to the bureaucratic part, I mean the bureaucrats, I don't mean the bureaucratic from a negative point of view, everybody is involved from top to bottom, and we have fantastic results. In a period of 2 years, we are close to 90 companies, 90 German Mittelstand companies which are being supported as part of this program. And from the investments which have been declared by, let's say, about 50-55% of the companies, we are talking about an investment facilitation of close to 750 to 800 million euros. Which is which underlines the intent of the investor, and it also underlines the effectiveness of a ease of doing business program like this. So I think I would not want to comment on ease of doing business overall, but in this Indo-German context, it is fairly effective.
So what is it? Okay, my last question to you. What is the kind of, see, Indians are always hungry for technology.
Yeah.
We don't, we do have a lot of our own, we export our technology in fact.
Right.
But the thing is that, as far as manufacturing is concerned, it's all the MNCs that, hold a upper hand.
Right.
Now, how do you look at, building or bridging that gap between German companies, the German technology companies to Indian manufacturing units?
Well, this gap is quite a significant gap, and where Indian companies really need to pull up their socks is investment into R&D, and this is the area wherein we definitely lag much behind, because if I look at the average investment, a typical Indian mid-sized company, I'm not talking about the large corporates, it ranges anything from 0% to maybe 1.5%. That is the investment we make into R&D. Whereas if I look on the German side, we are talking about investment which could be anything between 3 to 7, 8. It could actually even go to double digits, and this is what keeps them at really the front end. So manufacturing, yes, but it's always not about a low low labor cost argument. It should stand on its own in terms of skill set, in terms of competence we are able to offer in the manufacturing sector. The market should itself be attractive enough for companies to come here and set up their businesses. So I think the Indian side has to really learn more and invest more on the design, engineering, R&D part of it. Whereas the German side, they already are quite, I would say, global benchmarks when it comes to be it manufacturing, be it design and engineering. I think that is where they can learn probably a bit of jugaad from the Indian companies, because it's very it's very rigid at times. Frugal innovation, frugal engineering. These are concepts which are very new to